Welcome to CINEPRO, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The movie starts after several years searching for a way to return to the world of the living. Freddy Krueger had a new idea and decided to go to the only individual capable of making his victims remember his existence. Meanwhile, in the middle of a lake surrounded by a dense forest, a student jumps into the water to swim for a few minutes. But suddenly, she starts to hear noises of someone watching her. Frightened, the woman tries to run away but is surprised by a sinister figure that begins to chase her. During her escape, she ends up tripping and falling to the ground, and realizing she has no idea where she is, the student tries to stay silent. At that moment, the woman is surprised by none other than Jason Voorhees, who strikes her body with his machete, pinning her to one of the trees. However, before he leaves, the masked creature begins to have hallucinations, in which he sees his victim transforming into other people, and shortly after he comes face to face with his mother. After congratulating her son, Miss Voorhees states that she has a new task for him and orders Jason to head to Elm Street, because the young people there need to learn a lesson, as they have been behaving very badly lately. Without a second thought, Jason heads toward the city, not even imagining that his mother was none other than Fred Krueger, who used his powers to manipulate his mind. Far from there, in one of the houses on Elm Street, Gabby is having fun with her friends Kia and Lara, but they do not realize they are being watched by someone outside. Minutes later, the doorbell rings, and to answer the visitors, Gabby throws her cigarette away, hitting Jason on the head, who is standing right in front of the house. When she opens the door, she finds her boyfriend Zach, who reveals he brought his friend Blake along so the girls could meet him. Suddenly, the power goes out in the house, and Zach decides to go upstairs with Gabby. While Zach waits for his girlfriend to use the bathroom, he decides to get a drink and ends up being surprised by Jason, who delivers several blows to his back. Immediately after, the masked monster pulls the ends of the bed with his arms, folding the guy's body in half. Worried about the noise, Gabby approaches the door to check, and when she sees blood running under the crack, she decides to open it to find out what's going on. When she finds her boyfriend already lifeless on the bed, she starts screaming in panic, and within seconds, everyone runs outside in desperation. At that moment, a police car approaches, and after noticing the group screaming in the streets, Officer Harry wastes no time and calls for backup immediately. After investigating what happened to Zeke, the police gather to talk to the other victims of the incident. Harry hands a glass of water to Lara, who questions why they are being asked about their recent dreams. Noticing that the officer is talking to Lara, the sheriff orders him out of the room, and the student tries to remember the name repeated by the police during the interrogation. Because of this, she realizes they were saying the name Fred, and as soon as she remembers this information, she notices the police station is completely empty. Confused, she begins to walk around the place, looking for the officers, and after a few minutes of searching, Lara comes across a little girl lying on the floor. Noticing that the little one seems to be crying, the student approaches to understand what's happening, but upon doing so, she realizes the girl's eyes have been removed. Scared by what she sees, Lara tries to back away, and then the girl reveals that Fred is coming and that everyone must be warned. During the conversation, the young woman ends up being teleported to another place, where she sees the tombstones of all the victims eliminated by Freddy, along with a trio of girls jumping rope while singing the Dream Monsters song. Far from there, Blake returns home, where he argues with his father, who questions why his son went out so late at night, since he was supposed to stay home to take care of his sister. Annoyed, the boy says he needs time, as he is still mourning the loss of his best friend. Now alone, Blake remembers Fred's name and says he will look for him to avenge Zach, no matter what. At that moment, the boy notices strange movement in the garden in front of him, and approaches to check what it is. However, upon doing so, he ends up facing a goat staring at him. Immediately after, Blake is surprised by Fred Krueger, who tries to eliminate him with just his silhouette, but the attack does not cause any injury to his victim, allowing him to escape safely. Because of this, Fred realizes his powers have not yet been fully restored, and decides to wait a little longer, letting Jason eliminate his target on his own. Blake then wakes up on the porch bench, and realizes it was all just a nightmare. In addition, the boy notices his father sitting next to him, and pushes him to get his attention. Meanwhile, as he does this, Blake ends up dropping the man's head, which had been removed by Jason, who appears right behind him. Before he can react, the boy is struck by the creature's blade and is eliminated instantly. Far from there, in a psychiatric hospital, Will finds out about the recent attacks from the news, and asks the attendant to turn up the volume on the television, but the man ignores him and turns the device off. Irritated, the patient starts shouting and is dragged away by his friend Mark, who asks him to calm down. Trying to explain the reason for his concern, the boy says that is Lara's house, and he really needs to know if the girl is okay. Upon hearing this, Mark says they have no chance of escaping from there, because from now on they are under the total control of the staff. Later, the pair talk in their room and Will explains that he doesn't care what the doctors think about his stories, because he knows it was all real. Although he is not sure if he believes the story, Mark decides to help his friend escape from the psychiatric hospital, and the next day he tries to get the attention of one of the inspectors. Noticing that the patient seems to have suddenly gone mad, the man decides to sedate him, making him lose his strength. After being taken back to his room, Mark reunites with Will, who asks why he did all that. The boy then reveals that he managed to steal the inspector's keyring, and thanks to this, the pair are finally able to escape from the psychiatric hospital. In the morning, Lara tries to stay awake so she won't be attacked by Freddy Krueger, and after saying goodbye to her father, she heads to school. At the same time, the sheriff appears and tells Dr. Kelton about Will and Mark's recent escape, leaving the man worried. However, the officer asks him not to be afraid, because this time they will catch Freddy Krueger before more attacks happen. At school, Lara goes into shock upon hearing the news that Blake was killed along with his father. Even though they are in shock, the girls decide to continue with the school day, but Kia and Gab show up and try to understand why their friend didn't sleep the previous night, and the girl tries to explain everything she saw during her nightmare. At that moment, Mark appears and claims that the creature Lara saw is none other than Freddy Krueger. At the same time, Will approaches the group, asking the boy to stop scaring his friends. As soon as she sees her old friend again, Lara collapses, causing her to lose consciousness. Worried, Kia yells for the students to call the nurse, and when they notice the principal approaching, Will and Mark move away from the hallways. Minutes later, Lara remains resting in the infirmary, while Gabby and Kia wait for her in the waiting room. Trying to find something to deal with her boredom, Kia starts reading one of the magazines about plastic surgeries. However, as she does so, she is surprised by Fred, who slashes her nose with his claws, removing a piece of the girl's face. Because of this, the student wakes up next to Gabby in the waiting room, and realizing it was all just a nightmare, she throws the magazine away. Hours later, Mark and Will check some records of the attacks that happened in the past, and the boy concludes that the reason they were locked up in the hospital was to hide Fred's existence. Thus, Will decides to go to Lara's house, so he can protect her from the dream monster, and Mark says he will stay at his own house. Later, at a party in the middle of a large cornfield, Will shows up and starts talking to Lara about the incident that happened at her house, trying to understand how Fred could have resurfaced in the world of the living. At the same time, Gabby walks to a denser area of the cornfield to get away from the noise, and at that moment, she comes across Zeke, who asks her to follow him immediately. Without thinking twice, the girl goes after her boyfriend and starts crossing the field, ending up in front of two power towers. Not understanding, Gabby enters the place to look for Zeke, and at that moment, she is surprised by Freddy. Panicking, the girl tries to escape the tower, but the exit door disappears, and as she approaches, she is startled by a sinister head that tries to attack her through the wall. What she doesn't realize is that it is just a nightmare, since she ended up falling asleep in the middle of the cornfield. At that moment, one of the boys finds his classmate lying on the ground and approaches to see what has happened. Back in the nightmare, Gabby runs through the hallways looking for a way out, but Fred manages to corner her everywhere, leaving her no choice but to hide in one of the lockers. However, the student is easily found by the creature, who prepares to eliminate her. But at that moment, Gabby's body is destroyed by an attack from Jason, who managed to find her in the middle of the field. Because of this, the girl has her body removed from Fred's dreams, who becomes furious when he realizes that Jason is able to steal his victim. After eliminating Gabby, the masked monster throws the student away, and soon after he walks toward the other students. When faced with Jason in front of them, the pair start mocking his appearance, making him lose his patience and twist one of their heads off with his own hand. Frightened, the other student uses one of the torches to set his enemy on fire and runs away so he won't get caught. Despite the flames, Jason doesn't give up, and after grabbing his machete he begins to chase his target, leaving a gigantic trail of fire wherever he goes. Trying to escape, the boy runs back to the rest of the youngsters, but he is easily eliminated by Jason, who strikes him with his flaming blade. Dozens of students start to flee while others rush at the monster, who begins to eliminate everyone around him. During the fight, Jason ends up destroying one of the barrels of alcohol which splashes on his body, causing the flames to be extinguished. While fleeing the scene, Lara and her friends come across Gabby's body, and so they won't be next. They run to Will's van, allowing them to escape the party safely. Despite this, Jason continues to claim numerous victims around the place, eliminating all students who approach him. To keep everyone safe, Will drops all the group members off at their homes, and before saying goodbye to Lara, he decides to reveal what he knows about her father. The boy explains that Dr. Kelton was responsible for what happened to his wife, who was killed by multiple stab wounds while she slept. Upon hearing this, Lara goes into shock, and before they can continue talking, the pair is surprised by the girl's father, who orders her to get out of the vehicle immediately. Kelton then orders Will to stay away from his daughter and starts threatening him, causing the student to run home terrified. Trying to calm her, the man runs after Lara and claims he can explain everything the next day, but for now she should get some sleep. However, Lara refuses to do so, and upon discovering that her father knew Will had been locked up in the hospital, she realizes her father had been lying all this time, and flees to her room. In a rage, the man tries to break down the door, and to escape, the girl decides to climb out the window. Soon after, Lara runs desperately through the streets when she is found by Will, so the two decide to go to Mark's house together. Meanwhile, the boy looks at photos taken with his late brother, and at that moment, he begins to hear noises coming from his bathroom. Checking the room, the boy realizes there's nothing there and decides to take his medication to stay awake, so he won't be attacked. However, before he can do so, Mark is surprised by Fred, causing him to jump and drop his last pill in the sink. Because of this, the boy starts to panic and sees his brother appearing in the bathtub in front of him. Soon after, Mark's feet are trapped by several tentacles, and he starts screaming for someone to wake him up, while Fred laughs uncontrollably. At the same time, Will and Lara arrive at the boy's house, but all the entrances are locked, so the pair has no way to rescue their friend. In his nightmare, Fred manages to capture Mark and says he will use him to send a message to everyone. The monster then throws his victim against the wall, setting his back on fire, causing the same thing to happen in real life. Despite being in a panic, the youngsters can't do anything except watch the attack on their friend, whose face is scratched by Freddy's claw. Finally, the creature of nightmares carves his message into Mark's back, saying that the dreaded Freddy Krueger is finally back. Hours later, the group of youngsters gathers to figure out what's happening, and at that moment, they receive a visit from Officer Harry, who reveals everything he knows about Jason so far. Thanks to this, the survivors realize that it was Fred who brought Jason back to life, and during the discussion, Lara ends up falling asleep, causing her to have another nightmare, where she sees her friends and family trying to kill her. Soon after, the girl comes face to face with Fred, who is about to attack her. However, she is quickly rescued by her friends, and when she opens her eyes, she sees a human ear in her hand. Scared, Lara throws it to the ground, causing the thing to turn into several maggots. With the situation under control, Will remembers that Fred only attacks his victims during their dreams, and decides to take the group to the psychiatric hospital to steal the dream suppression pills. As soon as they enter the place, the group decides to split up to look for the pills and end up alerting the security guard, who goes to check what's happening. Minutes later, Fletcher ends up alone in one of the rooms to rest a little, but in a few seconds he falls into a state of illusion, making him see a sinister slug in front of him. Even with the sinister image of the peace and love slug, Fletcher gets excited and decides to follow it. By doing so, he arrives at a room with several unconscious patients, who get up and start whispering towards him, revealing the location of the dream suppression pills. However, it was all a trap, and as soon as he grabs the pills, the boy is surprised by the slug, which enters his body. Realizing that Fletcher has disappeared, Harry and Linderman run to look for him, and when they return to the room, they find the young man dumping all the pills into the sink. Soon after, the pair are surprised by Jason, who ends up missing his strike and hitting the power panel, causing him to start being electrocuted. Before he could escape, Harry is grabbed by the monster, and because of this, the officer is quickly eliminated by the electric shock. Desperate, Linderman grabs the policeman's gun and starts running, while Freddy, who is possessing Fletcher's body, goes to the tranquilizer cabinet. Seconds later, the group of 3 youngsters is surprised by Jason and they run frantically together with Linder.